Hey everyone, Gary here with Tennessee Stands. Thanks for joining us again. Have a really cool guest today. My friend, you probably know him if you are in the Twitter verse and all around, but want to bring on my good friend, Robby Starbuck. Robby, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, Gary?
Awesome, man. Good to have you on. Are you in Nashville or are you traveling around the world?
I just got home. Yeah, I just got home from CPAC, so I am here and excited to be back. It's funny you asked how I'm doing. I was like, yeah, pretty good. I think I broke my foot at CPAC, so I have to go to the doctor tomorrow and see what I did to it. But other than that, really good.
Well, hey, thanks for making an interview with Tennessee Sands with a potentially broken foot. It's commitment. Well, one of the things is a couple things to talk about. I mean, you've got when you tweet or when you get out there, when you speak, I've seen you speak on a variety of topics. You're someone I just sort of consider is really, really in the know on things happening, especially on a national level. But one of the things that I think is pertinent, your family came here from Cuba, right?
Yep. They came from Cuba. Some from Camagüey, some from Ciego de Ávila.
And so some pretty incredible scenes we're seeing right now coming out of Cuba. And so I wanna play a clip and then gonna have you sort of talk about that. Let me roll this.
Estamos aquí por la represión que hay con el pueblo, que nos tienen matándonos de hambre, toda La Habana entera se está derrumbando y estamos sin casa, sin nada. Tienen dinero para construir hoteles, para construir de todo. Y a nosotros nos tienen pasando hambre.
Por eso también aquí estamos convocando a todos los revolucionarios del país, a todos los comunistas, a que salgan a las calles en cualquiera de los lugares donde se vayan a producir estas provocaciones. Hoy, desde ahora y en todos estos.
So, we need to get all the communists out in the streets, is what this guy's saying.
Yep.
To bring a stop to this insanity going on out there. So I'd like to get your thoughts on this. One thing that I'll say before I turn it over to you, I noticed that this guy was being quoted saying, "We're hungry, we have no foods, we're hitting the streets, whatever." I was listening to Steve Deace podcast today, and he had a clip from Biden's interpretation of what's happening in Cuba is that the people are revolting because there's not enough vaccines was what's coming out of the Biden campaign. Anyway, man, talk about what you think, what you see happening in Cuba and kind of what that means to you and what it means for freedom here in the U.S.
Well, first I'll talk about the Biden administration. This is probably the most insulting thing that they could do is try to make this about COVID. I watched pretty much every video I think that there is online about these protests. I listened to every single one, and you know what I didn't hear one time? I didn't hear them talk about COVID, and I didn't hear them talk about COVID vaccinations. But if you went on social media in America and you just read the headlines of the news, you would think these were massive protests because people wanted needles jabbed into their arms by the government more quickly. That is not what they were protesting at all. Every single one of these protest videos, you will hear one of three things: either them screaming for freedom, pleading for freedom, for liberty, or praising the United States in some way, whether it be by waving the American flag or by talking about freedom in the US or wanting democracy, wanting a republic, things along these lines. This is not about COVID. This is about the culmination of leftism and where it leads. You know, I found myself on sort of a weird roller coaster of emotions as I saw this going on because on one hand, I'm so incredibly proud of these people in Cuba. I still have family there, actually, which I've mentioned once before, I think ever. I've never really talked about it publicly, but I still have family there. I have to be careful about it because I don't want them to face political retribution because of what I'm doing in the US. So I don't even contact them by phone ever since I started doing all this, because I don't want anything bad to happen to them. But, you know, so I'm incredibly proud of them. But on the flip side, I'm incredibly saddened that there's still so many people in America who don't understand, number one, how lucky we are, or have been, I should say. And number two, are concerned enough about what's happening now to say, I'm taking my stand now because I don't want to end up being those people in Cuba. I don't want to end up being in that position where I can't feed my family, I have nowhere to live, and I depend on the government for every single thing I need, and the government can't fulfill any of it. If you don't want to end up at that point, this is our last stand. This is our last chance to stand up and say no to the authoritarian Marxists who are taking over our country right now. And so I really hope, you know, here in the US, one of the effects of these Cuba protests is that we get a whole lot more Americans listening to Cuban Americans, like myself, like my family, like all the other ones I know. I mean, there's a reason that we are I'm pretty sure we are the most conservative voting bloc in the country. And there's a really good reason for that.
Because you've seen this before.
Yeah, and we all know the signs, you know. So all of the signs, all the precursors of what happened in Cuba and how we got to the place that we find ourselves now there, is those have happened already. You know, they either have happened or they're in the midst of happening right now. From indoctrination in schools, we see it with CRT and CSE and the way they talk about politics in the classroom, to the way that, you know, the disinformation campaigns, the desire to control all information. We just saw yesterday the Biden team is working on a way to actually see our text messages so that they can fact check our text messages in real time, okay? And then going door to door. Cuba, you know, the so-called revolutionaries, they went door to door too. And it wasn't for, you know, confiscation at first. It was for many different reasons at first. One being health, is they pushed the idea that they cared about the health of Cubans, okay? And now in the last week, we've seen the Biden administration come out. They're rolling out this program to go door to door in our communities. And so if people can't see that we are on that path, oh, and I left out racial division. I mean, a million other things that they used in Cuba that are happening now. If we don't realize this is happening now, we're in big trouble. We need to wake enough people up to be able to stop this.
Right. And I think I first saw this on, I think it was a tweet that you sent out on my feed. There was an image, one of the first images coming out of Cuba as they were marching down the street. They were waving the American flag. And it's amazing every time you see these types of protests happen, they're waving the American flag, obviously, as we all know, around the world, as a sign of freedom, as a sign of liberty. But here in our own country, we have this, we're supposed to have this shame attached now to our flag.
Well, you know what's so important about that for people to think about is that those people that are out there waving the American flag right now, that's despite decades and decades of indoctrination to hate America, okay? So a lot of people might not know this about Cuba. Okay, this is how deep the indoctrination runs. When Castro and the Communist Party took over Cuba by force and stole everything from people, one of the first things they did was they took over education. You know, they had actually already done that. They'd gotten that stake beforehand, but they made a real push in the schools. And one of those pushes to gain the trust and the sort of loyalties of the kids was the blindfold thing. So they put blindfolds on all the kids. And they asked them to pray to God for ice cream, okay, with a bowl in front of them. So they'd pray to God for ice cream. They took the blindfolds off, no ice cream. And then they'd put the blindfolds back on and they'd say, pray to Fidel, pray to the Communist Party for ice cream. They'd take the blindfolds off and they have ice cream sitting in front of them and they tell them to eat the ice cream. And the kids, obviously, love the ice cream. This is just one piece of many throughout their lives of the type of indoctrination they faced in Cuba that still somehow they fall in love with America. You see these people in the streets with flags, and it's because freedom is addictive. If you get a taste of freedom when you've been repressed or oppressed your entire life and you get a little sliver of it, you're going to want more freedom because it's that crucial to not just our humanity, but our souls. Everything from religion is derived from freedom, to be free to practice your faith. You know, all these things
Good.
we value so much and take for granted, those people are fighting for right now. So I think that's an important point for people to understand, is this is despite so much opposition within their government and so much brainwashing that goes on.
Meaning, even here in our own country, as we battle things like CRT and revisionist history and the 1619 Project, we should have that same sort of hope that liberty is still the predominant force in spite of all the indoctrination that, you know, there's so many people that say, well, America's lost. There's no turning back. You know, it's only going to get worse. We can't think that way. And history would prove that we ought not think that way, because liberty always rises to the top. I agree with you. Liberty, I love that. Liberty is addictive. It's a really good T-shirt or a hashtag or something.
You can
like that.
steal it. You steal it. Tennessee stands. That'd be a good one for Tennessee stands.
But that's really great. So, you know, with your experience, knowing your family coming from Cuba, knowing the Cuban people, you sort of having that perspective there. What do you see the outcome of? I'm watching these protests in the streets. I'm watching these people be oppressed by this oppressive regime. You just saw this. Is that the president of Cuba? I guess we were watching the guy masked up, whatever, calling for all the commies to go outside. And
Yeah, it's the president.
Yes, so he's calling for the commies to go out, you know, and shut this down. What can we expect now that this revolt is happening, that people are rising up?
Well, you can expect them to hammer down pretty hard, you know. So the last time this happened in Cuba, and actually I should say every time this has happened in Cuba, the Cuban government threw people in prison and killed them and tortured them. They try to send a message every time. Now, that's slightly more untenable in the present environment because for a number of global reasons, but most principally the fact that the Biden administration and the Democratic Party know they have a serious problem right now with Latino voters. And so they are worried about what may happen here, because if it looks in any way like they're supporting communist regime, they're torturing people and killing them. I mean, that's pretty much the straw that'll break the camel's back on all of the Latino communities. It's already broken with the Cubans because we vote overwhelmingly Republican, but it'll have an effect on all the other groups within the Latino, group. So I think in their eyes, they're going to probably try to do what they can to convince Cuba not to do that, but that's going to be a tough sell. Cuba, in their ruling party, is just overwhelmingly instinctively brutal. They've just always been that way. It's kind of like other governments we've seen in the Middle East or in Africa, where that's their natural instinct, is go with brutality because that's what keeps people quiet. It's going to be harder for them to do that this time, though, with cameras and internet and all that. But they did shut down the internet. So, you know, I did have some sources in Cuba, actually, who I haven't been able to get a hold of now for a few days because they shut the internet down.
So internet shut down as of right now in Cuba?
Yeah, it's shut down right now. Social media sites are shut down, all of that. And don't be surprised if that's one of the things that is that comes out of this, is that the Cuban government restricts access entirely to social media, because they only opened that up just a few years ago. And, you know, I think in their mind, it has done nothing but harm to their party, because it's given people access to information about freedom. And like we said, there's nothing more dangerous than that if you get a taste of it. And these people have gotten a taste of it by seeing how other people live their lives. So, you know, and at the same time, conditions only worsen year over year in Cuba, you know. So I think one of the important things we need to do, though, out of this is hold the Democratic Party accountable. The number of people in the Democratic Party who have praised Cuba, their system, and, you know, their healthcare system specifically, people like Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, AOC, Karen Bass, who, by the way, was almost chosen to be vice president for Biden. She was second in line after Kamala. These people have praised Cuba repeatedly, and Fidel Castro. One, Karen Bass essentially was in a program where she was an adherent and went to Cuba. Okay, so these people are radical in many different ways. And in this one, we can't allow them to sneak out from under this and pretend that they've done anything but essentially say they want the same system here in America. So we've got to hold them accountable for that, because they did the same thing back with Venezuela. When Venezuela was doing somewhat well, they said, oh, this is a great system. And then the minute it came crashing down, they're like, oh, we weren't talking about this. This isn't real socialism. You know,
I was about to bring that up, the Venezuela. I mean, you know, obviously Cuba has been struggling under this communist regime for a long time. And it seems like, you know, whenever these socialist policies were instituted in Venezuela, the decline was rapid. I mean, like within a decade, you know, it just happened. So Cuba obviously has sort of teetered along and kind of survived, you know, for a few decades. But as we continue to ratchet up this need for socialism, I mean, is it possible we're sort of seeing, and maybe is that why people are revolting? Are they seeing is Cuba going the way of Venezuela, like towards, you know, total depravity?
Oh yeah,
and
that's
decline?
where it's going right now. I can tell you that 100%, no doubt at all. You know, I can tell you this. In Cuba, the healthcare system that we've seen so many Democrat politicians praise, there's really only one nice hospital. It's in Havana, and that's where the ruling party goes. Okay. Outside of Havana, though, where the vast majority of Cubans actually live, their medical facilities are disgusting. There's no medical devices. There's no medicine. There's really very little to work with. Okay. And it's been that way for a long time. I had a relative probably about, I'm guesstimating here, so I might be off by a year or so, but it was about 6-7 years ago, started to have pain, went in to try to get a scan. It took 3 years to get a scan. And then 3 years later, they tell her that she has terminal cancer, and they weren't going to treat her because she was an item line. She's not a human being to them, you know, so they didn't even try to treat her, even with pain medicine. So she died in a hospital with blood on the walls that had not been cleaned, with no sheet on the bed, even on a metal bed. I mean, it doesn't get more disgusting than the conditions these people live in. And unfortunately, you know, it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse, you know, and that's just, and you'll hear some people on the left say, oh, this is because of the US embargo. So what they're essentially saying when they say that, if you hear somebody say that, what they're saying is the survival of socialism or communism depends on them being able to do business with the largest capitalist country in the world. Okay. Does that make any sense?
That's good.
Wouldn't the greatness of socialism or communism be able to overcome that?
Overcome any challenge.
We've been able to overcome not doing business with a bunch of commies and socialists many different times before.
But they can't overcome not doing business with the capitalists.
Exactly. And so that should tell people something. It's a BS argument. It's obviously not rooted in reality. And it's a way for them to try to skirt under the fact that, yes, socialism and communism always fail. And they are essentially the same thing. Okay. Socialism is just the slow walk to communism. That's all it is. It's a way to feed people in who are nervous about the word communism. And at a certain point, socialists get enough power consolidated and communism is ushered in.
Incredible. Well, man, that's really good. That's really good stuff. In these last few moments here, I'm sure you've done this a lot as you've done podcasts and interviews. I know you recently went to Dallas and spoke at CPAC. Just in these final moments, I mean, you're just north of us in Davidson County in Nashville, running for Congress. And so I definitely wanted our viewers to know that. I know we've got a lot of folks here in Middle Tennessee, and I think they need to know who you are. So just tell us about your run for Congress, why you're running, and what people should be looking for from Robby Starbuck.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. First, I want to say, you know, my district, District 5, it actually may end up including these areas south of Davidson. You know, we'll find out the redistricting later this year, but every 10 years it's recut. And the expectation this time around, the majority leader just told CNN a few days ago, is that Nashville is going to get cracked, which means you have to add in districts either north or south, or potentially west. So we will see a different looking district. It's potential that this gets cut in, but essentially this is a gigantic opportunity for us to take the majority in the House in U.S. Congress. This is a seat that has been in Democrat hands for over 100 years. And flipping a seat like that as a product of redistricting,
100 years, this seat has been a Democratic seat.
Yeah. So this gives us an opportunity to flip this and allow us to have, you know, really not just a historic win for the party, but a standard bearer win for our state, you know, in terms of the fact that we can do this with these larger cities being a part of the district. It'll be part of it, not the whole thing, but it shows that we can do this. And on a large scale for, you know, ballot going down ballot, having a Latino on the ballot winning will help all other candidates by proxy by lifting up our Latino voter share and getting more people out to vote. So I'm excited about that because we can push more conservative policies into the Latino community here in Tennessee by virtue of just having me on the ballot and having me outreach to those communities. So I'm really excited about that. But beyond my family coming in from Cuba, you know, I'm kind of a seminal American story. Son of a penniless refugee, and I had a goal and a dream, and because America told me I could do anything that I set my mind to, I did exactly that. I became a director and directed Oscar-winning actors, actresses, some of the biggest music stars in the world, and then I came out in 2015, endorsed Trump, and I never shut my mouth ever since about politics, you know, to great detriment in my career. But it's, you know, we've reached that stage after the 2020 election where I felt so let down by so many of our representatives that I said, you know, I can either whine about this and be upset, or I can be the change I want to see and run for office so that I can at least know in my heart that my district won't have a representative who disappoints them perpetually over and over and over again and says they're going to do something and then doesn't do it over and over and over again. So that's why I'm running, you know, and I'm really proud of the endorsements we have so far. We've got Senator Rand Paul. We've got Congressman Ken Buck. I can tell you this exclusively. We've got Congressman Madison Cawthorn and I just filmed an endorsement 2 days ago. He's right over, you know, next to us in
North Carolina or South Carolina? North
Carolina.
Yeah.
He's right over the Tennessee border, his district. So, and then we've got Candace Owens, which people are going to find out tonight on the Candace Owens show. And then we've got Charlie Kirk and TPUSA and Trump's lawyers. So we've been, you know, moving fast on all these things, and everything's getting crazy, but we need people to volunteer. We need people to help because we have the same goals as Tennessee Stands, and that's really freedom and liberty. Freedom and liberty are both addictive, and you know, that's going to be my fight, is making sure that we protect and expand freedom, because you know, you really can't go wrong if you err on the side of freedom.
We're literally going to have a "Liberty is Addictive" T-shirt available on our store, on our website this afternoon.
I love it.
Well, while you're on too, I want to put this up. So we have the Freedom Matters tour. We are kicking off this weekend, and it's great to have you on because you are going to be sharing the stage with us, not this weekend, but in some of our future events. We've got a great lineup of speakers, and you can go to freedommatterstour.com, and we will be adding, right now we've got about 5 tour dates scheduled. We'll be adding roughly about 5 or 6 more all across the state, heading towards Memphis, of course, here in Nashville, Chattanooga. So you can head to freedommatterstour.com and join myself and also Robby Starbuck on the road. Robby, thank you so much for being here, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and hear what you have to say. You got great insights into the things going on. So wish you the best in your run for Congress. I know a lot of folks that follow Tennessee Stands will be watching you closely as you progress through the campaign. And cheers, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it. By the way, congratulations. I was going to call you, but then I was like, you know what? We're going to be on anyways. I'll tell them here. Congratulations. Nashville children will not be force masked this coming year in school. That is in large part due to what you have done and the people who've donated and supported Tennessee Stands. Your donations to Tennessee Stands and your time and volunteering, everything, all those efforts, this wouldn't be happening without it. Okay. It is the pressure from Tennessee Stands and great supporters like they have and I have that are the reason this is happening. That pressure bore to bear this freedom for kids to be able to go to school and not have to be muzzled while they do it. So congratulations, Gary, because it's in large part due to what you've done.
Thanks. That means a lot. And I hope a lot of our followers know, I mean, just 3 or 4 weeks ago, we not only emailed, but we printed out and sent snail mail packets to all 140 school districts across the state notifying them of our ruling here in Williamson County, where the judge clearly said that he could find no lawful authority by which a school district had by state statute or our Constitution to require face coverings for students. So we made sure we took that packet, we sent that ruling out, we sent a letter, and we put school boards on notice saying, listen, there's no authority here. And should you continue this into the fall, we will challenge that legally in the court.
You're going to be in big trouble if you keep it up. And
that's right.
Congratulations again, too, because the state of Tennessee fired the lady who was running vaccines, who was pushing propaganda for children to be able to get vaccines without their parents knowing about it. And again, that would not have happened without the support, in my opinion, it would not have happened without the support, the volunteers, the people donating to Tennessee Stands and your work. That is why this is happening, because people like you and the great supporters of Tennessee Stands have stepped up and have said, no, not on our watch. We're not having our freedom stolen from us. We're not allowing Tennessee to become an authoritarian Marxist state. We want freedom. Keep doing that. Yeah. Keep fighting for freedom. And we're going to keep getting great news like this.
And that's all because liberty is addictive. So I got to let you go because I got to go design that T-shirt. So
yeah, go. My only request is I want one of the shirts.
Okay, no problem. You got it. All right. It was good to see you, brother. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.